The latest unemployment rate from the Bureau of Stats has just dropped. Let's bring in our business editor, Ross Greenwood. What's the number, Ross?
Yeah, well, it's pretty much right on the expectations of economists who had thought that it would tick up to 4.1%. Now, bear in mind, of course, one reason why some have criticised the Reserve Bank for having cut interest rates on Tuesday was that there was no clear evidence that the employment markets were softening. This is perhaps the first sign. Now, to be fair, January numbers can bounce around a bit. And the reason for that is because even if you go back to January last year, it's the same unemployment rate. But from there, unemployment rates fell. And the reason really is in many cases, people take January off. And so the unemployment rate does tend to tick up a little bit higher in January and then starts to tick lower subsequently. But Australia's very strong employment market does continue. There were a few more part-time jobs that were lost during this period of time. There was around about 10,000 of those lost. But balancing that out, the employment market is still strong. 54,100 new full-time jobs created in January. So again, these are very, very strong numbers, and it still goes to that point that Australia's jobs market is probably one of the really good news bits of our economy right now.
Have you got a sense, have you been able to pick up from the ABS yet where the jobs are and where the job losses are?
Yeah, well, that's right. So largely what you can see out of this is, in some ways, there's a few bits and pieces here. You see the unemployment rate here of 4.1%. Look at the number employed versus the underemployment at 6%. So this is all pretty low. The participation rate is again higher. So there are record numbers of women in the workforce. Now, this is a couple of things. There's good news for Australia. That is, many families actually need two incomes to be able to afford mortgages and quite clearly to be able to afford the increased cost of living that's taken place. Then on top of that, it's a situation where because clearly you want every brain in the economy, that also is a part of the good news for Australia's economy. So this participation rate, and particularly participation rate of females in the workforce, is one of the real trends of this market. Now, the reality is the Reserve Bank is going to look at these numbers and really feel pretty neutral. As we indicated, when the Reserve Bank cut interest rates on Tuesday, it was almost taking itself out of the election campaign. I would expect the Reserve Bank from here, Kieran, even with these numbers, to be almost silent during the whole election campaign. Yeah. And the reason for that is there's not much of a reason for them now economically to come out and make any big statements about future monetary policy.
And what about the markets? How are they reacting?
Well, let's have a quick look at some of those and just see if there's any reaction. The market, the ASX 200, had already been well down ahead of this. It's now down by 84 points. It's pretty flat after this. So really, in many ways, it hasn't changed the trend. Aussie dollar ticked up just a touch, 63.3 it was before, now 63.49 US cents. Not much change there. And even you can see maybe a little bit of a tick up in the markets over the past year, but, you know, really not terribly much to write home about. So in many ways, this is pretty much the expectation. The other one to watch, the expectation of an interest rate cut in April. Here you can see 88.4%. It is pretty much where it was beforehand, that those rates are going to be on hold and probably until well after the election is run and won and done.
Ross, appreciate it as always.